sure. Okay, so I hit record there. Yeah, so I know you said you haven't been watching The Mandalorian, but for me at least it was really exciting to see some of your creations pop up there. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's like after Rogue One and the others came out, I sort of got really busy and I never got caught up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's exciting to me because it's certainly something I noticed, in episode 4, even as a kid, like, ooh, what is that big skeleton? I want to know more about that.
Yeah. The
So,
giant dragon.
yeah, exactly. So that's something that was just totally, you got to flesh out literally and sort of create the background for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
And I guess one of the questions you had is why did it have all those multiple legs? And I was inspired by two animals. One was the sandworm, which is a type of lizard that lives like I think in the Sahara. Of course, it only has 4 legs, but yet it's long in life, and the little legs go back and forth as kind of paddles through the sand, as like it's swimming through the sand. And then I was also inspired, likewise, by centipedes and that motion. And I thought, what if you have a really large animal that lived in a really sand dune-ish place? I mean, it's really heavy and all that. And of course, an animal like that probably kind of stretching the imagination, but it's Star Wars.
Yeah, no, exactly. You get to have that sort of creative license. So
do a little bit of different. One thing about Star Wars is that so many of the creatures, they're all very inspired by Earth, but sometimes you like to give a little bit of a surprise because actually so many of the Earth animals give us that little surprise too. Oh wow, I didn't know this about that. Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not ruled out in the Mandalorian. I definitely noticed it looks much more like a worm without the legs, but it doesn't rule it out either. So there's still a potential that they're there.
Yeah. All directors take all kinds of artistic license with artistic license, and that's okay. Right.
Yeah, so it's not something you feel too proprietary about. Other people are allowed to make some changes.
Yeah, well, Star Wars well, back in the day when it belonged to George, we felt like we were playing in his playground. And we were very privileged to play in his playground, but it was his and not ours. And that's kind of the outlook.
Right.
We have to remember, and I'm saying that in general, we had to keep in mind that whatever we created didn't belong to us. It wasn't ours to put on the wall and say, look at my monster, and it belonged to George. And so that, far from me to say no other artists can play around in that playground either, just because.
That's good. That's basic, kindergarten things we learned, right? So
It's pretty, there were times when you're working so hard on a particular creature, it's really hard not to want to take ownership of it. Right. But after the day, it's like, well, if I make my own book or my own movie, then that's different. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, and for me, it's just exciting to see that people are still playing, I guess, in that sandbox, literally and figuratively, that we're still getting to see some of these things that were just only hinted in the original trilogy. So.
Oh yes, it is so much fun.
Yeah, I haven't actually talked to anyone else about it, how they feel about it, but to me, it was just like, dragon! I was so excited.
Everybody loves a good dragon.
Yeah. Definitely. So in this show, I think I sent you the graphic picture or whatever where it spits out its stomach or something. I just imagine somebody like paging through the wildlife of Star Wars and seeing that for the EOBs, I think, and just being like, oh well, let's just make the dragon do that too.
Yeah. Why not? Thinking about original dinosaurs and gastroliths, birds following gravel. To this very day to help the gizzards grind up their food, and with oysters, like you said, maybe there's an irritant that if it's lodged in its intestines or wherever it is, and forms a protective pearl around it. Oysters can do it. There's nothing to say really that more vertebrate animal could not do that. And I'm thinking, oh, I know, what is it called? Bezoar stones.
Oh yeah.
While, you see human beings or other mammals, it's like, what is that weird thing? It's just this hard rock-like substance that's making protective layers around it before an object.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I got all excited thinking it was maybe eggs or something like that, but it seems like I just didn't know about the existence of these Krayt dragon pearls. So,
yeah.
well, I love the idea that there's this sort of mythical, you only can get one, obviously, if you slay a Krayt dragon. So it really, it's extra valuable.
Yeah. Well, Star Wars is interesting. It's sort of like a fairy tale or myth wrapped up in kind of a sci-fi spin. It's not. Whereas Star Trek is a very utopian science fiction story. Star Wars is a lot more of a myth. It's a lot closer to Middle Earth than it is to Star Trek.
Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. We have to say things a lot in our department.
Yeah. Yeah. I was also really excited they put a mention of the Sarlacc pit. So it lives in an abandoned Sarlacc pit, and someone's like, no Sarlacc pit is abandoned, but it is if you eat the Sarlacc first.
That's right, and that's what they eat.
Yeah.
There's always a bigger fish to eat the biggest, big fish.
Yeah, no, that's straight out of your wildlife guide, and something that when I was paging through it, years ago or whatever, I was like, that is so cool, because you don't think of anything being big enough or, brave enough, I guess, to take out a Sarlacc and just drag it away and eat it. So.
Yeah, that's what happens tonight.
Yeah.
When the dragons come out.
Do you remember having that idea? Like that idea strike you to have the Krayt dragon be able to eat a Sarlacc?
Yeah, because first of all, there was that immense dinosaurian skeleton that we saw in episode 4, which was really, really big. I mean, really huge. And then you had kind of a general idea how big a Sarlacc can be by the opening of the pit, which probably is the circumference of its mouth. And then go down a little bit, and that's still a pretty large, let's say, you got the size of a sperm whale type animal. But skeleton there, that was the sperm whale's big, huge creature, but that other one's like, Diplodocus, maybe even longer. And so I thought, okay, that's probably what eats the Sarlacc. So.
That's great. I love that. So it seems relatively simple when you go through the steps of it like that. So is that something that your science background you think sort of helps you in?
Yeah, I think so, because my brain kind of automatically sorts animals into categories and ecological niches, and that's just kind of the way my brain shuffles things.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting. It turned out not to be an Anuba like I thought it was, but a Massif, which was something, I guess, from the Clone Wars TV series, which I still haven't watched all of. But just the idea that the banthas have these sort of domesticated dog-like creatures is certainly something that's in your book, and I think very interesting for a long-term, species of humanoids living on that planet and realistic.
Right. Yeah. The Anubas, I actually went and Googled them, and they appear in a certain form within the Clone Wars, within those many, many endless episodes. And that's wherever they appear is fine with me.
Yeah.
Various guises. The main characteristic of Anubas is their jaw structure. They've got this jutting lower jaw with a really pointed lower and some kind of really pointed beak, and then two fang-like protuberances on the other side of it.
Yeah, no, and I like the idea that, just like with wolves and humans or whatever, there's this sort of, generations and generations of, domestication. And then, although some of the Nuba stuff is pretty dark in the wildlife guide, I looked at it again last night, and they like watch pod races in order to clean up after crashes.
Yeah, they do that, you know, and everything. It's a circle of life, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And as for the banthas, I mean, there's pages and pages in the wildlife guide. It really sets it apart that they get so much. Why did they get that special attention? What was it about banthas that made you flesh out that whole mythology, basically?
Well, and the bantha itself is a very endearing animal to look at. I mean, it's big and fuzzy and cute, and of course we know that those are actually being portrayed by elephants that are wearing the bantha costumes. And I think that the personalities, the way they move, is very much like an elephant, and elephants are very, by nature, mystical creatures. And those would have been Asian elephants under the costumes. And so I was thinking of Asian elephants and all that, how much they have impacted the cultures of, of South, Southeast, Southeast Asia, and just the wisdom that all those animals carry. And so that's what got me thinking about viewing similar attributes to the banthas. And you've got these desert-dwelling people. They feel very mysterious. The banthas feel mysterious with just all that shaggy fur. And so it just seemed that there might be this bond between the two that could be very, very special. That's what again, that's just kind of the relationship that people and animals have had for thousands of years.
Yeah, no, it's something that's not delved into in the movies, obviously, or in the Mandalorian yet. But they do show them mostly just as sort of like pack animals, and
Yeah.
but I love knowing that sort of background behind, and I do hope that they show that or portray it a little bit more on screen at some point. So
I would hope so, because I mean, the wildlife of Star Wars has always been in print, and so it's gotten wide audiences, and it's part of like mythology around that, and it's also in Wikipedia, all those fun facts about those animals. So I would think that I would tend to think that would be reflected somewhere along the line within Star Wars.
yeah. So do you think that you'll watch the show at some point?
Oh yeah, I do. I have just been happily very, very busy with work. And the thing is, if I put Star Wars or a very highly visual story like in the background, I'll be watching it instead of working.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, it does demand your whole attention. So
It does. It does. Things like with Star Trek, which is a little more cerebral, I can often tell what's going on just by the dialogue. But with Star Wars, there's stuff you want to see.
yeah. No, and The Mandalorian's done a really good job. I mean, it's very different tonally from the movies, but you can still tell it's Star Wars. And one of the way it does that is something we've discussed before about, when you're changing scenes, you have the little critters scurrying by, or, just little things like that in between scenes or in the backgrounds or something like that. And that does feel so quintessentially Star Wars.
Yeah. I think that's what I tried to do in the book. You mentioned he was waiting for somebody to crash. I mean, that would be a very George Lucas type thing to do. All I would have to do is go whiz and have one of them just go lick their chops, and that would be really funny.
Right.
And that was kind of like, you learn to kind of key in on those sorts of little humorous jokes, or not little ironies. Like, yep, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. Oh, he bought lunch that time.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, cool. I mean, those are all of my questions that I sent you in advance, and that I had when I watched the show. To me, it was just really great because it's set on Tatooine. For the first episode set on Tatooine, at first I was like, oh, really? We've been there before. But then they did so much more on the planet with the wildlife, and sure, there were people involved too, but what I'm mostly is the wildlife, and I thought that was great.
Where are you streaming or watching it from?
I'm watching it on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I've already got, I have Amazon Prime, Netflix,
Right.
CD Access. It's like,
Right.
I really want to add another one yet. Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people signed up once they heard how good The Mandalorian was. They're gonna get a lot of retention that way. They keep making it this good, so. All right.
Want to get embarrassed when I Star Wars questions. Oh yeah, okay.